Hey guys, Corvid Katana here with another speed paint, and this week it is Eyesore and Sightless. They got the most votes, so that's who I'm speed painting. Few of you wanted me to talk about them, so that's what I'll also do. I'll start with Eyesore. I first designed Eyesore quite a few years ago, and she was my persona. She was based off a budgie I had as a kid. This budgie was my best friend, and this budgie had a bit of she had attitude, and a lot of people in the house were always scared to go in my room because she'd fly at them. She didn't like strangers coming in my room. She had such an attitude, and she was very fun and spunky, and unfortunately she passed away, but she was, a bird I really, really loved, so I wanted to somehow, I guess, immortalize her in a way. So a lot of Eyesore's colours are based on this budgie, like the little extra tail feathers that are like the yellow and green, and the colours she has on her body, which are like the turquoise and the blues and the yellows. They're all based on this budgie's colours, which is where colours come from. And when I originally designed her as my persona, the colours were a lot more neon, and a lot of people called her an eyesore. So I thought, well, that's what this character's name will be. We'll name her Eyesore. And that's kind of what ended up happening. As for Sightless, his design is actually based on a Silent Hill monster. I'm really big into my horror. I love horror games, horror movies, all that stuff's really interesting to me. So I wanted to create a character that was sort of horrific in that way. And I based him off a lot of the things I saw in those games. And one of his main inspirations is the dog monsters from Silent Hill 4. I don't know how many of you will know what they look like, but basically these dogs with these like blank faces and long tongues, and he's mostly based on that. And when I originally made him, he was more like a wolf or a dog. But over time I've kind of tried to make him more unique by giving him a different body shape to help make him stand out, and it kind of suits him better. I got that idea because his front claws have always had that like raptor-like look, but like the dinosaur is based off of baryonyx. It has claws like that on its hands anyway, so he kind of just sort of evolved to look more and more like one of those. Again, like the front of his mouth is based more of like a dog, whereas the rest of his face is like that dinosaur, and then he has like the big ears, which is based off an aardvark, and the long tongue as well, same reason. So he's kind of a mishmash of a lot of creatures. His colours are actually reminiscent of Eyesore's father in a way, because Sightless appears to her like that because Eyesore wanted a big monster to protect her, so that's kind of how she would envision a big monster, and that's what appeared to her. Because Sightless himself isn't technically look like that at all. Sightless himself is actually 3 crows that are just pure energy. He is actually a curse. He's the bird eye curse, which is a curse in my stories, which basically is very powerful, and whoever is cursed with it ends up with their eye missing and 3 birds living in it. It's a horrific curse that keeps the victim awake but makes them immortal, so even though they are suffering from insomnia and other awful things, they can't die. And Sightless was that curse that was inflicted on one of my characters years ago, and that character was Dismay. And Dismay got that curse because he was a thief, and he decided to break into the house of a witch to steal her familiar. He had quite an arrogant attitude. He figured, he basically owned everything. He had no fear of what would happen if he got caught, but he did get caught, and he should have feared what happened because the witch, in her grief of the loss of her familiar, put the bird eye curse upon him, so he lost his eye, and 3, crow-like creatures ended up nesting and living in it. And it's pretty horrific curse, and it can only exist one at a time, so while someone's afflicted with it, no one else can have it. And the afflicted person is usually immortal, so it's a curse that's never really been in existence until that time. And what sort of happens is Dismay kind of goes through an entire part of his life where he's like losing it. He's lost all hope. He's losing his feathers. He's a mess. And then he stumbles upon a god, and in his desperation, because he's kind of a bit delusional, he blames this god that for this curse and ends up trying to fight it, and the god tries to fight him, but things kind of go a bit interesting because the gods in this world can be killed by other gods, but an immortal can't even be killed by a god. So what happens, thanks to the curse, it ends up basically killing the god, and the god was the god of time, and since there always needs to be a god of time, that god's powers end up going into Dismay, who becomes Anarch, which is was that god's name that he killed. So he ends up becoming the new time god, and his first action is to just wreak havoc. So the other gods seal him away, and time passes, and then the stuff that happens in my TCOD, or Game of the Gods story, happens, and Anarch gets broken out by Shinu, who wants to win this little battle he has going on with his sister, the big owl-like god, over the civilians and stuff. He wants to win this war, so he goes, well, I'll play my trump card. I'll break out Anarch, who should do what I say since I broke him out. But of course, the first thing Anarch does once he's been broken out is kill Shinu and go off to do his own thing. And this kind of turns this little war that all my other characters were having, like Silvertail and Tycho and Risk and everyone, kind of turns their war into something much bigger. And what actually happens in the end is what was going to happen in that story was Tycho was going to show up with being possessed by basically the god of light, the opposite of Shinu, and he was going to, or rather, that god was going to use the powers to basically banish Anarch to the realm of demons, where he'd become a demon, and because she can't kill him, this is the best she could come up with to get rid of him for a permanent amount of time, was to banish him to become a demon so he couldn't enter the real world. But he still had the power of being a time god, and he still had the power of this bird-eye curse, which over time, since becoming a god, he's kind of learned to have a bit of a handle on, and it doesn't really destroy his life since gods don't need sleep. He doesn't suffer from insomnia anymore from it. He can kind of benefit off its powers a little, and he kind of learns ways to get it to do his bidding. Since it's kind of a mindless curse, he kind of learnt to use it to his advantage. Anyway, he ends up sealed away as a demon, and obviously he's not happy with this. A lot of time passes. The demons there were meant to basically tear him asunder, but essentially the god forgot about the curse that he had inflicted on him. So instead of the demons being able to destroy him, he just becomes some warped monster that's part god, part demon, part curse, and he becomes Cassius, and Cassius uses the bird-eye curse to basically get Eyesore. That bird-eye curse becomes sightless when it manifests in the real world, basically becoming Eyesore's shadow. He's sort of not physically there, but also sometimes is physically there. He kind of switched between being more of an apparition and more being physical. So he's kind of in Eyesore's head, but at the same time can manifest as real. He's rather more in her head when he's a shadow. Since Sightless can turn into kind of just like a shadow, that's when he's more in her head. But when he's like the big monster thing, he's physically there. That's kind of how he works. Anyway, Cassius is kind of using Sightless to kind of mess with Eyesore's head. And since Sightless has no sort of control of his own to begin with, he just kind of does what Cassius wants, which is, help Eyesore do awful things and encourage her to do awful things, make her worse and worse, so she's kind of a mess. And Cassius basically wants that because the more broken she is, the easier it's going to be for him to get in her head as well and then possess her. And that's kind of what he's using Sightless for. Sightless's form, the reason that bird-eye curse turns into Sightless is because, like I said, that's what Eyesore sees him as. Eyesore wanted a friend and a monster, so she pictured a friend and a monster, and she didn't want someone who would stare at her for the way she looked, so that's why Sightless evolved to have no face, basically. He can't see how she looks, and he doesn't criticise, and he's a good friend, but Eyesore's thoughts of him being her friend and being a conscious being kind of eventually somehow makes this creature that was just a curse have emotions and have a personality, and as Sightless develops his own personality, he realises he doesn't want to hurt Eyesore, and he doesn't want Cassius to possess her, so he kind of betrays Cassius. But of course this just makes Cassius more tenacious in getting Eyesore, and it does eventually boil down to Cassius possessing Eyesore and taking over her and kind of becoming the god he was before. And he wants to do that just so he can go and find the other gods and destroy them, get revenge. Since he's also mortal, he's kind of the only one who can take out a god, being able to be a god himself and kill them, and be immortal so they can't kill him. He's in the perfect position to do it, so that's what he wants to do. And basically it ends up being Eyesore and Sightless's job to try and stop him. Sightless still has his Alpha Omega kind of form, which he isn't really in control of using. It's more when he sees Eyesore suffering or basically on death's door, he can turn into such a creature. And the story was kind of going to boil down to, in the end, Eyesore defeats Cassius and becomes a god himself. But there is also an ending where the opposite happens that I thought of, and Eyesore's kind of left alive, and Sightless goes away, and yeah, she was going to go, since that curse can only exist one at a time, and since Cassius would be dead at the end of the story, Eyesore was going to go find a witch, take out her own eye, and have the curse inflicted on her just so she could get her friend back. And those are the two endings I kind of have for the story. Both of them kind of end with Sightless going away, because if he becomes a god, he also has to go away. But it also would be a great privilege for him, so instead of being treated like a monster, he becomes something good, and he was always something good inside, so that I think would be a good ending for him. But I haven't really decided on either ending. There's also other characters in the story, like Eyesore meets a couple of chicken characters. She meets my nameless character, who is a rooster who used to be used for fighting. He's got a bit of a quirky attitude, and he admires Eyesore. Whereas Eyesore also meets a female chicken whose design I'm currently working on. I keep reworking her because I'm not 100% happy with how she looks. And she was going to be Eyesore's girlfriend, and they were going to be very happy together with Sightless, and it was all going to be a nice big happy family. But of course the ending was going to ruin that a little bit. But that chicken was she kind of is the one who pulls Eyesore out of a lot of her bad habits, because Eyesore has a lot of bad habits. Like, Eyesore wants to be a predator rather than a prey animal, so she'll go out and try and catch small mice and rats and kill other pheasants and just get herself in all sorts of trouble, and Sightless would have to come bail her out, because there's no way a little pheasant's gonna fight and kill maybe a cat or something, so she'd get in a lot of trouble off it, and Sightless would have to come bail her out, and it was making her sick as well. She was getting very sick of it, and obviously not eating the proper things a pheasant should be eating all the time. But she does, again, Sightless doesn't really tell her off for this stuff because he's kind of a pushover, whereas when this chicken comes in, she's kind of like, dude, that's bad, stop that, and kind of, gives Eyesore some harsh truths about the stuff she's doing, and that's kind of why they end up working well together, because Eyesore kind of needs someone who's going to rein her in and tell her, look, dude, that's bad, don't do that, you're going a bit overboard here. But yeah, that's kind of the whole story, basically, how it's going to be laid out, or will be laid out if I ever get around to publishing more of it in some way. I'm never really sure how to tell these stories other than through little videos, but that's kind of the full story on her character. So yeah, that's it for now, I guess. Again, comment below with what you'd like to see me speed paint next. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I hope to hear from you again. Bye bye.